White people have officially become second-class citizens. This has been building for a while. Affirmative action disadvantages white people in college admissions and hiring. Reparations policies are already in motion to redistribute money from white people to black people for 19th century slavery. But now, the libs are trying to ban ZYN. ZYN, for those who don't know, is smokeless nicotine. It's a little pouch that does not involve tobacco. ZYN's parent company has officially suspended online sales nationwide as it faces threats of expanded regulation and even bans at both the local and national level. Now, I'm not saying that ZYN is a health product. Each little 6 milli lip pilly carries a hefty dose of nicotine, so over time it might make your heart explode, but that's about it. Compared to cigarettes and the sin spinach marijuana, ZYN is a relatively restrained vice. So why are the libs going after ZYN? Because white guys like it. I'm not even joking. Barack Obama, you might recall, banned flavored cigarettes with one exception: menthol, which coincidentally happens to be the preferred cigarette of 85% of black smokers. He banned all the flavored cigarettes that all the people like, except for the one that black people like. Why? Because the menthol are healthier than the cherry cigarettes? No, it was a purely political play to advantage one demographic group over another. Joe Biden just announced that he is postponing his menthol ban indefinitely. Wants to keep those black voters for November. Marijuana is terrible for your lungs and your brain, but the libs' favored ethnic and racial groups love the old Haitian oregano. Black people are more likely than any other group to puff the Peruvian parsley, and so the party of BLM could not think of banning it. But ZYN is consumed almost exclusively by fratty white yuppies who wear Patagonia vests, so ZYN must go. The libs are fine with legalizing and even subsidizing an ever-expanding array of mind-altering drugs. They're fine with doling out dangerous puberty to little kids, for that matter, if it furthers their ideological goals. But they are not okay with smokeless nicotine packets for white frat stars. They don't like the product because they don't like the users. I'm Michael Knowles. This is The Michael Knowles Show. Welcome back to the show. Listen, I got in big trouble yesterday, and I owe an apology to everyone. I promised at the top of the show that we would talk about how the man who pretends to be a woman who flashed his prosthetic breasts at the White House is now being accused of sexual assault by women who think that they're men. This is a very, very important story, of course, and I didn't get to it. I ran out of time. So I promise you, we will get to it today. But first, you need to go to thecandleclub.com. Not a candle club, not just candle club. It's thecandleclub.com. And you need to order, you know what, I'll use this lighter instead. This is a better lighter. I'm going to light up my beautiful Sicilian summer candle. I'm so excited I'm knocking things over on my set. This candle is a citrusy delight. It is part of my MK collection, Michael Knowles Show collection. You can also get favorites such as the pumpkin spice latte candle. You can get the Wise Man, which is reminiscent of the Lenten Smells and Bells candle. You can get the Crème de la Crème candle. You can get the Old Soul candle, which is a really nice old waspy New England kind of smell. You can get all of it. Plus the Mayflower candles in beautiful colored glass jars, though I was corrected yesterday. We should, in today's day and age, say jars of color. You can get all of it at thecandleclub.com. Speaking of white people and black people, another oversight is I did not mention yesterday the name of the new sacred holiday, that very important feast on the liturgical calendar of liberalism, that of course would be Juneteenth. The term that no one outside of a few towns in Texas had ever heard of until about 5 minutes ago, and now we have to all pretend it's a really important sacred national holiday that black people treat like Christmas, even though most black people had never heard of it either. Juneteenth! And what is Juneteenth? Is that the day that slavery ended? No, it wasn't the day that Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation, nor was it the day that the 13th Amendment was ratified. No, it was the day that a mailman made it to a town in Texas and told people that slavery had already been abolished or something like that. I don't know. The libs are making a big deal out of it, though, and they really want you to celebrate. And they want you to celebrate not only by taking the day off of work and closing the banks and the dumps and the city services, which irritated a lot of people yesterday, but they also want you to engage in some rituals. They want you to cook some food. Here I have, and I can't believe this is real, the Associated Press guide to celebrating Juneteenth. Page 3 of this article asks, are there special foods served on Juneteenth? I'm just reading verbatim. Aside from barbecue, the color red has been a through line for Juneteenth food for generations, even though it's only been around for about 18 months. And generations now they always like the color red because red symbolizes the bloodshed and sacrifice of enslaved ancestors. A Juneteenth menu might incorporate items like barbecued ribs or other red meat, watermelon, and red velvet cake. Drinks like fruit punch and red Kool-Aid may make an appearance at the table. Well, now, if y'all want to be celebrating us some Juneteenth, you better get yourself some Kool-Aid and watermelon. Hey, don't get angry with me for saying that. I'm reading the Associated Press. This is what the liberal press is saying you're supposed to do. And then you ought to go out there and sing some old minstrel tunes, why don't you now? Take your time, Miss Lucy. Are you kidding me? This is so outrageous. This is such a caricature of black culture in 2024. It reminds me of when I was a freshman in college. Very liberal college, very Northeast liberal, prestigious, fancy left-wing college. They decided on Martin Luther King Day that they were going to serve in the dining halls Barack Obama's favorite fried chicken. I remember at the time I said, wait, what? No, it's not a Barack Obama holiday. I'm kind of skeptical that Barack Obama even really likes fried chicken all that much. Isn't he? His dad is a Kenyan Muslim, so he didn't grow up in African-American culture. His mom is a white lady, and he grew up in Hawaii. I don't think they're really known for that. Maybe a luau or some pork or something, but no, well, it's Martin Luther King Day, and Barack Obama's also a black guy, and all them black people love fried chicken. So the Yale Dining Hall is going to serve a racial caricature, just as the Associated Press is serving up a racial caricature for the supposedly traditional holiday that was contrived at the national level a few years ago. I have to thank my friend Steve Guest for calling my attention to this. When I first saw just the screenshot of, serve your watermelon and Kool-Aid on Juneteenth, I said, this can't be real. This is from 4chan or something. This is some racist joke about Juneteenth. No, it's the liberal press, of course. So then it got me thinking, why is this offensive? What is offensive about this? Well, one, because it reduces black culture to the silliest and most shallow caricatures, watermelon and Kool-Aid. That's something that's offensive about it. But the other thing that's offensive about it, and this is not just what's offensive about the menu or the AP's article, it's what people find offensive about Juneteenth, is not celebrating black culture. I don't think Juneteenth celebrates black culture at all. I think Juneteenth is a total contrivance made up and forced upon us by a small subset of extraordinarily ideological, fringe, black, and to some degree white activists. I think Juneteenth just coincidentally hit the national scene around the same time as the 1619 Project and the BLM riots, the George Floyd Summer of Love, where radical black activists, largely spurred on by self-proclaimed Marxists, burn the country to the ground from sea to shining sea. Nate Hochman had a really good thread on this yesterday, the cultural context around Juneteenth. There are some conservatives who are trying to cope, and they're trying to say, no, this is actually a win. Juneteenth is a win for the right because the people who freed the slaves are Republicans. We freed the slaves from the Democrats who wanted to keep the black people in slavery. And actually, it's a celebration of freedom. The libs hate freedom, and we love freedom. So Juneteenth is a great conservative holiday. Yeah, as Nate Hochman pointed out, that's true if you ignore all of the context around the Juneteenth holiday, which was pushed by leftists to advance a leftist agenda. So what is it about the holiday that's offensive? What is offensive about the holiday is that it is hostile to the predominant culture. Juneteenth, as I said at the time, I hate to say I told you so, Juneteenth is a replacement for the 4th of July. They call it the Juneteenth Independence Day. That's the federal holiday name, official name, the Juneteenth National Independence Day. That is obviously intended to be a replacement for the first Independence Day, known as the 4th of July. And you don't just need to take my word for it or think that this is going to perhaps come true in the future. It's coming true now. Tyson Foods got in trouble yesterday for offering T-shirts to employees for Juneteenth that had the 4th of July crossed out. Forget about the 4th of July, Juneteenth. This is the new Independence Day, and it's a new national holiday, the day that is supposed to celebrate the true birth of the country. They're replacing the holiday so that they can replace the country. That's the point. You need a new holiday, you need a new flag, you need new rituals, you need a new national anthem, which the leftists are also trying to push, the new notion of the black national anthem to be sung alongside that old national anthem at football games. You need all of these new expressions of a nation, because what the leftists are really after is a new nation. And they're going to use racial grievance to do it. They're going to use the notion of liberation. They're going to try to use black culture as a cudgel, even if their version of black culture is a pitiful caricature of a real culture. And they're going to make sure that culture is hostile to the actual traditional way of life that the vast majority of Americans want to maintain. During periods of turmoil like this, it's important to have some financial stability. It's why you might want to check out Birch Gold. Text Knowles, Knowles, to 989898. Saudi Arabia recently ended its 50-year petrodollar deal with the U.S., which has the potential to weaken the U.S. dollar. Since 1974, Saudi Arabia has sold oil solely in U.S. dollars, which was huge for our global economic dominance. It's for reasons like this that I feel it's important to diversify some of your savings into gold. And you can do that with the help of Birch Gold. For over 20 years, Birch Gold Group has helped tens of thousands of Americans to protect their savings by converting an IRA or 401k into an IRA in physical gold. To learn more, text Knowles, Knowles, to 989898 and claim your free no-obligation info kit on gold. Birch Gold has earned my trust with their education-first approach, as well as the trust of thousands of happy customers. They understand that navigating financial decisions can be scary. That's why their dedicated in-house IRA department is there to help you every step of the way. I am glad that I have a significant portion of my portfolio in gold. Protect your savings with gold. Text Knowles, Knowles, to 989898. Talk to one of Birch Gold's experts. Claim your free info kit. That is Knowles. Text it to 989898. Knowles to 989898. Speaking of the South, I think Juneteenth started in the South, didn't it? Texas, right? We turn to Louisiana. Some really good news coming out of Louisiana. Louisiana has become the first state to require that the 10 Commandments be displayed in every public school classroom. This is being pushed by Republican state legislators and the Republican governor. They demand that there be a poster-sized display of the 10 Commandments in, quote, large, easily readable font in all public classrooms from kindergarten up through state-funded universities. And the 10 Commandments must be paired with a 4-paragraph context statement defending the display, describing how the 10 Commandments, quote, were a prominent part of American public education for almost 3 centuries. And it's got to be in classrooms by the start of 2025. This won't be funded by the state. This will be funded by private donations, but it will be mandated by the state. This is terrific. This is really, really good news. And the context statement is really important here too. It seems as though the context statement might be somewhat defensive because you're trying to jump ahead of the objections that inevitably will come up, the public objections, the legal objections to this. They're saying, no, look, this was part of American public education for 3 centuries. So what changed? It's a reminder that the modern liberal notion of America and American freedom and the supposed separation of church and state and individual rights and our modern conception of that is actually rather different from the old conception of it. So what changed? Were the first 20 generations of Americans just wrong? Or is it more likely that we're wrong? Probably not 20 generations, I guess 10 generations of Americans. Were they just wrong? Or is it more likely that we are misunderstanding what they are doing? This is really good stuff. And it's also a reminder. I like homeschooling. We're probably going to homeschool our kids. Homeschooling is a defensive measure. Homeschooling is a tactical retreat, is what homeschooling is. Homeschooling is not the final goal. The final goal is to bring public education back into alignment with the things we actually want to teach kids. If we just retreat to homeschooling, then it's going to be the same boiled over, quasi-libertarian defensive measures that right-wingers have been taking for decades that have effectively ceded the entire culture to the left. Oh yeah, you liberals want to take over the universities? Fine, you can have them. We're not going anymore. Okay, well now the Libs have Harvard and Yale and Stanford, all the big state schools, and they have basically every school. You Libs, you want to take over Hollywood? Well, that's fine. We don't need Hollywood. Okay, well now the chief engine exporting American culture around the world, the Libs just totally have it. You Libs want to take over the media? All right, you can have it. Well, all right, now they have the powerful organs. Now they have big tech. Now they have this. Now they have that. Sometimes you need a tactical retreat so you don't get completely obliterated. I'm telling you, I'm in favor of homeschooling for that purpose, and I probably will homeschool my kids. But that can't be the end of it. We need a political solution, not just a personal solution, not just a cultural solution. We need a political solution, and this is a great example of this. Why on earth should the Ten Commandments not be taught in school? Why on earth should the Ten Commandments not be at the front of the classroom? You have pride flags at the front of the classroom. So don't give me any separation of church and state, or don't teach morality in the classroom or whatever. You're teaching people that pride, the deadliest of the 7 deadly sins, is good and worth celebrating. You're teaching people all sorts of messed up stuff about sex. You're telling them that sin is actually virtue. You're screwing up their biology education by saying that a man can become a woman on the basis of your heretical Gnostic cult. So don't tell me that this is about a separation of the educational system from religious views. No, the left is merging those things ever more closely every day. They just have false religious views. So how about we correct that with true religion? And I'm not saying that we need to have a bishop overseeing every public school classroom in America. Might not be the worst thing, although it depends. So the bishops are a little bit hit and miss sometimes with their politics. What I am saying is I think we can all agree on the Ten Commandments, can't we? What's the argument for not teaching a student that it's wrong to commit murder? Is there anything wrong with that? I guess the Libs would say there is something wrong with that. The Libs insist that we need to teach children that it is good to murder unborn babies. So it's not that they're leaving it up to the children to decide. They are actively in the classrooms teaching kids it is good to commit murder. They are actively in the classrooms teaching kids it is good not to honor your father and mother. Because they're saying that if the kids have a different sexual view than their parents, then they ought to hide it from their parents. And the school will actually help them hide it from their parents. The school will actually call them by the name of the opposite sex without telling their parents. The kids might put them on the track to and the transition without telling their parents today. So they're teaching them that commandment's wrong. They're teaching them to make all sorts of false idols and graven images. They're obviously teaching them to engage in weird sex stuff, violation of the 6th commandment. They're teaching them to lie, to deny the truth if the truth conflicts with one's preferences and feelings and irrational will. They're teaching them all that stuff. They're teaching them right now the opposite of the 10 commandments. So it seems to me the correction for that is not to say, well, let's just be totally secular and not teach kids anything. Well, if you're not going to teach kids anything, why are they in the classroom? You got to teach them something. We're currently teaching them the opposite of moral reality. How about we teach them moral reality? Sounds good to me. And we ought to do that in public schools around the country. Keep it up. Good job, Louisiana. Now to the important story that I didn't get to yesterday on themes that we've been discussing today. Do you remember the guy who pretends to be a chick who showed up to the White House when the White House had the Pride Progress flag centered with the American flags flanking it on the White House portico? And this guy flashed his fake breasts on the White House lawn. He's posing with Joe Biden for pictures. So that guy, his name is Rose Montoya. I don't know what his real name is, but he goes by Rose Montoya. That guy is now being accused by women who think that they're men of sexually assaulting them. According to one such woman, Rose Montoya sexually assaulted me while I was recovering from phallo surgeries, so surgeries to, I guess, make it look like she has a phallus. But it's really, she who says she's he is really referring to him who says he's her. She, meaning Mr. Montoya, confessed to violating me in an email sent from her, meaning his, official Gmail. My friend Elijah was also groomed and abused by her, really him. She, really he, has abused at least 3 other masked folks besides us, so that is women who pretend to be men. Here's a thread. And there's a long thread here. This is brought to our attention by our friends over at Libs of TikTok. My big takeaway: it is always the ones you most expect. Now, when you want to search for all sorts of confusing things on the internet, maybe some things that are politically incorrect, you probably don't want the government and big tech looking at what you're looking for. So you ought to check out ExpressVPN. Go to expressvpn.com/Knowles. Have you ever searched for something private or embarrassing using incognito mode? You know what I'm talking about. The Matt Walsh show. You ever do, and you think, I don't want to admit to anybody that I'm, well, did you know that incognito mode is not enough to hide your browsing history? All your online activity is still 100% visible to whatever third parties might gain access to it, unless you use ExpressVPN. Even in incognito mode, third parties like your ISP, your mobile network provider, and even the admins of your Wi-Fi network can still see every website you visit. But ExpressVPN reroutes 100% of your traffic through secure encrypted servers, so third parties can't see your browsing history. ExpressVPN is by far the best VPN on the market. By masking your IP address, ExpressVPN makes it extremely difficult for third parties to track your online activity. Works on all your devices. It's super easy to use. Just fire up the app, click one button to get protected. Don't just take my word for it. ExpressVPN is rated the #1 app by top tech reviewers like CNET and The Verge. Protect your online privacy today by visiting expressvpn.com/Knowles, expressvpn.com/Knowles. Get 3 months for free. expressvpn.com/Knowles. I want to put a little button on the story of the man who thinks he's a woman who showed his fake breasts at the White House, who's now being accused by women who think they're men of sexually assaulting them. Of course this is happening. This guy is extremely depraved, and he spends a lot of time thinking about weird sex stuff. And worse than that, I mean, I guess on this show and in the media broadly these days, and in public school classrooms and in Hollywood and everywhere, people are spending a lot of time thinking about weird sex stuff because the libs are forcing that upon us. And so whether you accept it or object to it, you're still thinking about it because it's just everywhere. It's June, the flag is everywhere. The weird sex stuff is everywhere. They think about it a lot. They do it a lot. And so, of course, they're going to engage in depraved behaviors. That's how it works. They argue that this is just an expression of freedom, that they need to be, come on, man, just be free. Just let me be free. How does it bother you? Just let me do what I want. Let me be free. You're just fuddy-duddies. You're just authoritarians trying to restrict my freedom. And it is true that we are trying to restrict some of the things that these people are doing. I don't think that dudes should have prosthetic breasts surgically implanted into them. I certainly don't think they should be permitted to flash those prosthetic breasts on the White House lawn. I don't think they should be sexually assaulting women. I don't think those women should be permitted and encouraged to pretend that they're men and undergo mutilations to do that. I don't think we should redefine marriage. I don't think a couple of men or a couple of women should be able to purchase eggs or sperm or children on the open market. I do want to restrict a lot of that stuff. But that does not represent a restriction of freedom. it doesn't even represent a restriction of what you can do. The reason to restrict all that bad stuff is so that you can do more good stuff. It's so that you can expand people's freedom to do good stuff. That kind of traditional ethic, and in this case, we're talking specifically about a sexual ethic, is not restricting. It just opens up new avenues. When you are told that you can't shoot up heroin, that restricts you in a certain way, but it actually opens up a lot of opportunities in another way, because there are only so many hours in the day. There's only so much energy that you have. And if you're devoting your time to shooting up heroin for hours and hours on the streets of San Francisco, you are not able to study, get a job, build a family, serve your community, make a pie for the widow down the street, go to the gym, learn the banjo. You are giving something up. Freedom is not, as the liberals pretend, just some infinite quality. And it's not even a totally abstract quality. We live in a contingent world of time and space. And when you do one thing, that necessarily closes off other things that you can do. And if we all just stopped thinking about and being indoctrinated by and having to affirm and celebrate and march in parades for weird sex stuff all the time, we would be able to do a lot of other things. It's a huge waste of time. It's bad for people to do this stuff. It's bad for the individuals. It's bad for society. It's bad for the people who then are sexually assaulted because these depraved behaviors are being encouraged. It's bad. It's bad in all sorts of ways. But it's at an even deeper level. It's bad because every second that we spend on this lunacy and nonsense is time that we are not spent doing things that are good for us and will lead to our flourishing and will lead to us having a decent society where people are safer, where people are freer, where people are more successful, where people have better families and more money and more leisure time and greater virtue and a closer relationship to God and everything in between all of that. That's why. So much sin is a huge waste of time, in addition to all the other bad stuff. Now, speaking of sick, disgusting stuff, before we move on from this Pride Month special of stories, we might as well get this story out of the way now. It's really gross, and I hate that we even have to talk about it. There's a report out from the New York Daily News. A bus full of animals was just pulled over, and the driver was arrested because the bus allegedly is a bestiality bus. It's a bus with dozens of animals, animals that were going to be used for depraved acts by human beings. I'll just read a little bit of it. Cops contacted the animal rescue workers, who said on Facebook the cargo included 30 birds, 4 shepherd breed dogs, a bull, and a pony. They were able to secure the animals, remove them from their squalid conditions. According to the SPCA, the animal rights group, the dogs were being fed the chickens, and the bull and the pony were being used for bestiality purposes in another state. And they figured this out because the driver had already committed past crimes. This guy, Sean Hirschbein. And so they're going to spend $10,000 to check the animals for human DNA. Let's just leave that. Let's stop reading that story for now and just ask one question. Why is any of that wrong? Why is it wrong? Why pull over the bestiality bus? Why conduct this big investigation? What's wrong about it? The chickens were being fed to the dogs. Yeah, chickens are fed to humans every single day. We don't have laws against that. Maybe the arch animal rights people, the super vegans, could make an argument as to why that's wrong. But I would like a non-vegetarian liberal to explain to me why the bestiality bus is wrong. It can't be because the dogs are eating the chickens. I don't think it can even be because the humans are doing depraved things with the animals. We kill animals. If we tolerate killing animals to eat them, surely those sorts of depraved things with animals are a lesser crime. Think about the way that we arrange our punishments in our own justice system. Murder is considered to be a more serious crime than, putting aside for a moment that animals don't actually have free will and can't really consent to anything because they don't have rational souls. But even put that aside for a second. Let's say that the animals are being, we consider murder to be a more serious crime than, and we kill animals all the time and eat them. So if you're a non-vegetarian liberal, it's obviously wrong and depraved and everyone involved should be arrested. But why is it wrong? It's wrong because it violates the natural law and the objective moral order. It's not wrong because of consent or something. The animals don't consent to be chopped up and eaten. And you're not a vegetarian, non-vegetarian liberal, so what's wrong with it? There's something that can be wrong about acts, including and especially sexual acts, beyond a lack of consent. There's things that are just wrong. And we know they're wrong because we have a conscience and because the natural law is inscribed in every human heart. And if it's true of the bulls and the cows and the chickens and the dogs, maybe that's true of humans as well. And maybe we can finally start to restrict things, restrict certain behaviors so that we can expand the opportunity for other behaviors. Just putting that out there. Because if you know this is wrong, then you got to follow, but you can't quite explain why. Maybe it's because there's something wrong with the way you're thinking about sexual ethics. Now, speaking of moral opprobrium, we'll turn to an even more serious issue. Socks. Millennials wear low-cut socks. Zoomers wear high-cut socks. This, according to one famous TikToker, Phoebe Parsons, is the distinction between the two generations.
This is exactly how you can tell the difference between a millennial and a Gen Z just by looking at their feet. Are their socks up? Or are they wearing hidden ankle socks? Because Gen Zs exclusively wear their socks up and millennials still wear ankle socks. I'm a millennial.
I think this might be true. Now, I don't wear socks because I'm lazy and I certainly don't want to launder them, not that I would anyway. But I don't even want that extra step. So I, being somewhat waspy, even the Italians though do sockless loafers sometimes. I wear my loafers, then I don't have to worry about it. So I have a little bit of remove to consider this very important issue. The Zoomers wear big socks. The millennials wear short socks. That's true. This is why you want styles and behaviors and especially ideas and desires that are timeless. Because I remember when ankle socks and even the little shorter socks came into vogue and we thought, this is so cool. Only boomers are wearing those long socks now, but we're cool. This was when I was 12 or something. Yeah, this is hip and cool, man. But then styles change. This is the teaching of Fulton Sheen, variously attributed to Dean Inge and other people, which is that if you marry yourself to the spirit of the age, you'll find yourself a widow in the next. Fashions, fads are always changing. I have not changed my haircut since I was 6 years old. When I was 5 years old, I had a slightly more to the side haircut than when I was 6 years old. I asked if it could go back a little bit more because I liked Elvis. But that's pretty much it. I've had the same haircut the whole time. And it's never been super in fashion, but it's really never been all that out of fashion. It's the kind of haircut that guys have been wearing for probably 100 years now or more. My clothing, I kind of just wear clothing that you could wear this kind of clothing in the 1940s or 50s or 80s or 90s. And it's never like super hip or cool, but then you're never caught out when the fashions drastically change. You wore the big powder blue wide lapel tuxedo with the bell bottoms to prom, and now you look ridiculous 20 years later. You want something that's a little bit It's more classic and that's more timeless. That's my aesthetic advice, but it ties into a moral advice, which is you don't want to totally abstract yourself from your time because we live in time and space. Okay, we live in history. We're born at a certain date. We're going to die at a certain date. And we're not going to meet people who lived 200 years prior. We might meet them through books. We might meet them through an engagement with tradition, which lends itself to classics and timeless ideas. But we're not going to meet those people. What we want from the contingent world of time is people. is encounters with real people. We are bodies as well as souls. We live in time and space. We're going to die at some point. So you don't want to totally remove yourself in a weird Gnostic, hippy-dippy, New Agey kind of way, or some Eastern religion kind of way where you think I've had past lives, man, and cycles of reincarnation. No, that's not true. You're born, you're created, you're born, you're gonna die at some point, and then something's gonna happen to you after you die. That's what you want. It's those people. That's the urgency of time and contingency. And the way that you treat those people, the way you engage with those people, the things that you can do with those people, ought to tie into things that are timeless and classic and that are not going to change. And if you can reflect that in your style, all the better. And then you won't get made fun of on TikTok for wearing short socks. My favorite comment yesterday is from SlapMyBase3825, who says, since we live in a world where we are what we pretend to be, then I am a Nicaraguan immigrant. Where is my free stuff? Andale. Andale, andale. Slap my base. You're so right. You're so right. If you are a Nicaraguan immigrant too, you should also come up here and help me roll some more cigars so that we can meet the demand. Speaking of millennials, President Biden and illegal aliens, President Biden has turned over his lectern to an illegal alien.
My resilient parents brought me to this country to give me a chance at a better future when I was just 3 years old. I am a dreamer. Growing up undocumented was not easy. Like thousands of other immigrants, my parents endured hard labor in order to provide for the family. They are a symbol of the American dream, and they helped me with my dream. It is a privilege to personally thank President Biden for delivering on his promise to protect American families like mine.
We're much better and stronger nation because of dreamers like Javier.
Okay, much better and stronger nation. He said, we're a nation of immigrants, which we're not. That's a term that was brought up by Vice President Dan Quayle in the early 1990s. We are not a nation of immigrants. We're a nation that was founded by settlers that then had waves of immigration, but then that shut down immigration for decades and decades at a time because we realized that immigration can create all sorts of problems, as it is today when the vast majority of Americans want to drastically reduce the level of all immigration, legal and illegal, and when an even greater vast majority of Americans want to shut down illegal immigration, Biden decides it's a good idea to invite this guy who's an illegal alien to come to the White House and complain. The guy, this young man who's my age, came over here when he was 3, apparently. I am not saying that he must be immediately deported. I recognize there can be some nuance with the enforcement of immigration policy. He should be deported. This kid should be deported for sure. But people in his position are not necessarily the sort who ought to be deported. The reason that this kid should be deported is because of his awful attitude. He clearly has acclimated to America because of his clear sense of entitlement and whining. It was so hard. It was so hard growing up as an illegal resident being treated with a red carpet in this country. It was so hard. It was so terrible. That's why I demand legal status and I demand citizenship. How about you demand nothing? How about you shut your mouth and say thank you? Thank you to the country that has been so good to you that should have, by all rights, deported you and your parents 30 years ago. How about you do that? How about just a simple thank you? But there is no simple thank you. It's wah, 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 woe is me, my life is so terribly hard, and I demand that you Americans give me even more than my family's already been given, which is more than any other country would have ever given my family in the history of the world. Absolutely enraging. And this is it. If this is the attitude, if the attitude of the illegal aliens is now one of entitlement and demanding even more than the extraordinary gifts that they've already been given by the extraordinarily generous American people, deport them all. Okay? That's going to be the attitude of Americans. I don't know what Biden was thinking here. I think that Biden has memory problems and he thinks it's still 2010. He thinks it's still 2008. When people are broadly in favor of migration and we want to come to a compromise and give a path to citizenship for the poor. This ain't 2008. This ain't 2010. Immigration is causing a lot of problems. We have an unprecedented invasion at the border. We have millions and millions of people coming here every single year. This has created economic problems. You're seeing major crime problems. American citizens being murdered by illegal aliens. The White House denies any responsibility whatsoever. The DHS Secretary, Mayorkas, denies any responsibility. No big deal. Every crime committed by an illegal alien that is encouraged to come here by this administration is the responsibility of the White House, in addition to the responsibility of the criminal. And now they say, hey, give them more. That is not going to play in Peoria. Not going to play at all. A little gratitude goes a long way. The left does not want any of it. Now, there's a story I was going to get to yesterday, and now I probably shouldn't get to because it turns out the story was fake news. Noam Chomsky, the famed linguist, who's probably more famous for his extremely leftist political views and his opposition to the Vietnam War and his opposition to all sorts of American policies. Noam Chomsky was trending because people said he was dead. And then, a few hours later, people said he was not dead. And it reminded me of when Tom Petty died. Tom Petty, the guitarist, who had said, Tom Petty's dead. No, Tom Petty's not dead. No, Tom Petty might be dead. And then a few hours later, he said, Tom Petty's dead. Now, in this case, it said, Chomsky's dead, R.I.P. Noam Chomsky. But then his wife came out and said, no, he's not dead. Stop saying he's dead. Apparently he's still alive. But in any case, by the time we figured out he was still alive, I already considered the significance of Noam Chomsky and put him into my show. And I want to talk about it. Better to eulogize Noam Chomsky now while he's alive and can appreciate it than once he's dead. Because it got me thinking about how we should relate to our enemies, how we should relate to our opponents. Yes, we want to destroy them with facts and logic. Yes, we want to totally own them online. Sure. But is there anything more that we can get out of it? You know, someone like Chomsky who just hates America, who's extremely leftist, who's really annoying. I thought, yeah, there's actually a lot to recommend Noam Chomsky. Noam Chomsky is a brilliant linguist. His ideas about linguistics are quite compelling, especially to conservatives. He believes in universal grammar, the notion of a genetically based language faculty, which, you know, language is near and dear to my heart and the heart of many conservatives and certainly to the heart of many Christians. We believe that the second person of the Trinity is synonymous with the Word, the divine logic of the universe. We believe that God made everything that was made through an act of speech, fiat lux. God said, "Let there be light," and there's light. God, you know, we believe that our Lord Jesus is synonymous with the divine logic of the universe, with the Logos. We believe that speech is what distinguishes human beings from all the other animals, from all the other created things. But Christians believe that angels and demons don't have language, that they communicate perfectly and intuitively, whereas with human beings, there's a gap between what we're thinking and the way we express it. We represent that with words. And there's a further gap because we communicate these things through the sound of words. So there's a symbol, which is the sound of the word, which is the symbolized, and the word is a symbol, and it symbolizes the thing that we're referring to. So there's a lot to recommend that. He has, there are older theories of universal grammar, but that's a pretty insightful one. Then, putting aside his work in linguistics, Noam Chomsky recognized that the media are totally full of it, as he made clear to an interviewer some years ago.
Well, I know some of the best known investigative reporters in the United States. I won't mention names, but whose attitude toward the media is much more cynical than mine. In fact, they regard the media as a sham, and they know and they consciously talk about how they try to play it like a violin. If they see a little opening, they'll try to squeeze something in that ordinarily wouldn't make it through. And it's perfectly true that I'm sure you're speaking for the majority of journalists who are trained, have it driven into their heads that this is a crusading profession, adversarial, we stand up against power, a very self-serving view. On the other hand, in my opinion, I hate to make a value judgment, but the better journalists, and in fact the ones who are often regarded as the best journalists, have quite a different picture. And I think a very realistic one.
How can you know that I'm self-censoring? How can you know that
you're
journalists
self-censoring? I'm sure you believe everything you're saying. But what I'm saying is if you believe something different, you wouldn't be sitting where you're sitting.
Brutal, devastating, and I think he's absolutely right about the way that the corporate media are shaped. So the guy was wrong about a bunch of things, and hated America, and he was just he got basic facts wrong about a lot of things. He denied the Cambodian genocide, for instance. That was kind of a big one, but he had some interesting views too. And the lesson I take away from it, whether Chomsky's alive or dead, or he's gonna die at some point. He's pretty old. One should learn from one's opponents. One should never be so incensed and passionate that one can't learn from one's opponents. Because if you learn from your opponents, at least they're good for something. If you can't even learn from your opponents, they're good for nothing as far as you're concerned. But if you can learn from them, whoever it is, some jerk in your office, I'm talking about Mr. Davies, of course, or that someone you don't really like in your community, or a political adversary like Noam Chomsky. If you can learn from them, at least they're good for something. Okay, there's no member block today because I've got to go pick my wife and newborn baby up from the hospital. So I suspect you will forgive me for that at least. I'm looking forward to seeing all of you tomorrow. I'm Michael Knowles. This is The Michael Knowles Show.